Actually, if you just make it really easy for people to like use sats day to day, even if it's always transacted in the fiat, you're getting people used to using Bitcoin, and you're just like normalizing the use of Bitcoin as like an everyday means of exchange.
Hello, I am Cody Ellingham, and this is the Transformation of Value, a place for thinkers and builders where we ask questions about freedom, Bitcoin, and creativity. My guest today is James Scaur, a prolific New Zealand Bitcoin entrepreneur and developer now living in Sao Paulo, Brazil. James recently won the Bitcoin++ hackathon in Florianopolis with the project NostrPIX, enabling payments to anyone in Brazil using sats. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a hell of an intro.
How does it feel getting out of New Zealand, man?
I'm not gonna lie, great. Like I missed I didn't like a lot of things about like being in New Zealand over the last 2 years. It was definitely particularly difficult to see how much New Zealand had changed in between like 2019 through to 2022. So like I'm quite happy to be out.
Well, you and me both. I mean, we both got out, and I mean, I was just back in New Zealand last month and for 4 weeks, and it was really interesting. I mean, you're from Christchurch originally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt Christchurch and the South Island had a little bit of an edge on it compared to the rest of the country, but certainly where I had sort of fallen in love with Wellington and these places, it just felt grey and tired, and sometimes it reminded me a little bit of the 90s. It's like we'd gone back in time. So you're in Brazil now. Tell me about the landscape there in terms of innovation, what's happening, like what's going on at a high level?
I mean, particularly for Bitcoin, it's a really exciting place to be. There's a lot of like grassroots crypto adoption, and also like products and services, startups, like big institutions who are getting involved with Bitcoin. Day-to-day life is I would say like more and more technologically advanced in New Zealand. I have, in just the few months that I've been here, I've been able to get like a Bitcoin collateralized credit card. I've been able to switch all my bills now onto being like paid with sats. It's definitely one of the most exciting parts of the world, I would say, right now.
Yeah, well, look, at a high level, Brazil's like what, 300 million people plus?
220, I think.
220 million people, and huge economy. Lots of agriculture, a lot of urban stuff, a lot of manufacturing, all sorts of things going on. It seems to me like it's kind of in a sweet spot where there are aspects that are developing, but it's also got quite established urban centres. How do you see the play between that, like innovation versus up and coming country? Like, how does that all work together?
I would just say like the most common like misconception about developing countries is that they all are like the development is just equally distributed. Like yes, Brazil has parts that are, Brazil just has like parts that are like super developed and parts that are like really like undeveloped. It's not like an equal level of development all around the country. And I think it's you see a similar thing in South Africa, in Eastern Europe, and a lot of different countries. Sao Paulo itself is a pretty good, like microcosm of Brazil, because it has parts that are lots of people living on the street and very, very messy, and poor infrastructure, frequent power outs, but then other parts that have a human development index of like the population like higher than Geneva. There's certainly parts of Sao Paulo that are very developed, and then other parts that are like very like undeveloped.
Interesting.
The same case.
Well, I wonder. Like, so I just had a conversation with someone else about another country, and the experience they had was a little bit negative, right? This was a developing country in Africa that they're based in, and basically they said, corruption's everywhere. It's not even about education, really. It's like there is, the state is just basically leading this corrupt thing that means everyone's life kind of sucks. How would you describe at a high level the political infrastructure or just the landscape for success, and especially in contrast to New Zealand or in comparison with New Zealand?
Yeah, there's definitely more corruption going on here than New Zealand, and in many ways like the deck is stacked against Brazilians. To like Brazil's a very not socially mobile population. It's very hard if you grow up poor to become rich, or vice versa. Well, I mean, it probably is easy to become poor if you start out rich, but like a lot of things are at play. Brazil has a very large public sector, to the point where the word for public company in Portuguese, empresa pública, refers to a state-owned enterprise and not a publicly traded company. They have a very large public sector. A lot of people for years and years have been telling their kids you got to go for these concursos públicos, which are these sort of high-paying government positions that you can almost never get fired from. So Brazil certainly has a very what would you say,
established kind of bureaucracy.
Yeah, a very, very established bureaucracy, and a sort of generally a general climate that makes business hard. It's very hard for businesses here to know how much tax they have to pay. It's very hard to hire employees. Very expensive to hire people formally, and it's rated. It is one of the most hard countries to do business in, globally, whereas New Zealand is the easiest country to do business globally, right? But what I kind of notice out of that is most Brazilians are negatively affected by that, but the few who manage to actually overcome the challenges that Brazil provides end up becoming the type of people who could succeed anywhere. If you can make a business work in Brazil, you can make it work anywhere. I've thought that for a long time.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It sounds like it's a similar story with a few places like that, Argentina, other places where there's just so much paperwork and legacy bureaucracy to get through. It makes traditional businesses challenging. But what does this mean for something like Bitcoin entrepreneurship or digital businesses?
But I mean, I think Brazilians just naturally understand Bitcoin in a much, well, Latin Americans generally, but yeah, Brazilians understand Bitcoin a lot easier than people from first world countries. The memory is still fairly fresh from when a former president basically stole everyone's pension funds, the Kiwi savers, back in the 90s to fund a couple extra months of operations. And they've had neighbors who have gone through hyperinflation or forced conversion of US dollars into whatever local currency they have. So Brazilians know the Brazilians are generally open-minded to new ways of using money, or the possibility that there could be a better money than fiat. So yeah, I would say that is what drives a lot of Bitcoin market dominance in Brazil, and increased Bitcoin adoption in day-to-day use here than compared to many first world countries. And in order to adapt to the global marketplace, I feel like Brazilians adopt technology faster, because there's a lot of people here, and it's very hard to make a successful business. So the competition is really intense, and that I think provides more innovation.
Interesting. Well, there's something as well that stands out to me when you look at even somewhere like Japan, which is the most clean-cut bureaucratic place, or New
Except
Zealand
it
even.
works.
Yeah. Well, it's if you look at what somewhere like Japan was like after World War II, it was actually quite a chaotic place. This kind of you had these black markets, you had all sorts of corruption up until like the 1980s, pretty much, until they started to snub out the Yakuza. But all sorts of dirty dealings, and there's still stuff like that happening today. But I guess my point is the period of economic growth after the war kind of went hand in hand with this very frothy, messy market. And it seems, I'm not an expert in development studies, but it seems like there was some kind of principles that gave that rails and sort of funneled it into a productive ends. And I wonder whether Brazil, again, just given its makeup of those highly developed urban centres and then maybe poorer, more rural areas, whether there's something similar where even though it's maybe frothy and chaotic and there is a big income gap and it's kind of maybe a bit corrupt, is there actually a pathway where that actually becomes a much more developed and rich country potentially?
Yeah, I think so. I think, Brazil has a lot of things going for it. Has a lot of, rare earth minerals. Almost all power in Brazil is generated from like renewable sources like hydroelectric dams. Great like fertile like farmlands. Other like not rare earth minerals as well, like it's also good for like iron mining and things like that. So Brazil has a lot of natural resources to tap into. It also has, even though the population I think is like dipping below replacement rate, it doesn't have like the same kind of spinning top thing that you have with a lot of first world countries where like young people aren't having kids and then there's like a growing like older population. Like Brazil is much more balanced, and that sort of trend of young people like having less kids is only started in recent years. So I think Brazil is well positioned for like changing worlds. I think that Brazil has in many ways reached an equilibrium. The middle class has like grown a lot in the last 2 decades, I want to say, and like just overall, like I see a positive future for Brazil. Or at the very least, I don't think it can get worse, and I think a lot of other places can get worse. And so relatively speaking, I think Brazil could become much more like prosperous.
Yeah, and you mentioned hydropower, and I know there's the Itaipu Dam, I think between Brazil and Paraguay, and that's like the third largest hydroelectric scheme in the world. So really interesting infrastructure there. I just want to dwell a little bit on the entrepreneurship stuff as well, just for a moment, James, because I know in New Zealand you've had a couple of projects that you've worked on over the years, and a few of them have run up against regulatory issues or otherwise been cancelled for some reason. And I wonder, maybe contrasting that with your experience and kind of the can-do attitude in Brazil, like with some of your projects.
So I feel like in New Zealand, it's really easy to open a business. It's really easy to figure out how much tax you have to pay. It's easy to get services. You can generally do a lot of things without much bureaucracy for your business, but it is really. But what makes New Zealand like particularly difficult for running a business in is really small market size, like high cost of like goods sold. Like if you're like importing things or building things, high costs to employ people. So like I just feel like the market size and the opportunities that you have in New Zealand, even though it's easier to go after them, it's harder to like scale, or it's harder to like tap into something that has a big market. There's a lot of businesses that work in Brazil that I don't think would work in New Zealand. Like there are several merchant services, bill payment services, Bitcoin banks, and like credit cards. There are like many of these, many that are like Bitcoin only as well. Whereas in New Zealand, I think it's very hard to make even a service that is out there to serve every single person into crypto in New Zealand is still going to be a very small amount of people.
Something I remember you saying to me when we met last time was in New Zealand, there's these barriers to trying new things, and people are almost scared to put their feet in the water or to be first. Whereas my understanding was in Brazil, it's maybe a little bit more loose, and so you can try stuff out. So tell me a bit about that.
I would say culturally it's also more difficult in New Zealand. In New Zealand, you really notice it, I think, when you go outside, like tall poppy syndrome, where like we really don't like to see someone like standing out or even thinking that they might be better than anyone else at anything. Sort of the being like just middle of the road, like mediocre, average, or like not exceptional at anything is seen as like a good thing, or at the very least, like it should definitely not be looked down upon. And that comes with the good side, that we're a very egalitarian country and treat people fairly, and you don't have a lot of homelessness or poverty. But on the negative side, there's New Zealand's definitely not a country where people care about being exceptional or like excellent at something. And so and I think Brazil too, like in New Zealand we spend a lot of time like waiting for other people to tell us it's okay before we can go ahead and build something or do something. In Brazil, people just used to taking initiative. If you don't take initiative, like you sort of just get like left behind. So there is like a lot more of a go-getter attitude. Like, let's just try it out. Let's just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Culturally, yeah.
I hope you won't mind me sharing the story, James, but I remember we were having a drink or something in Wellington, and you were saying your early days in Brazil, and you were at a club or something, and you saw a girl and your eyes met, and you were doing the classic Kiwi thing, which is just to sort of slink back and be a bit cool, but straight away some other guy came up and had a chat with her, and no one saw them again. They sort of disappeared into the night, and that really stood out. I remember that story because you're right. New Zealand, we wait for it to be okay, and I do think this is related to the nanny state. And if you come in, it's like, well, what is the FMA going to say? What is the regulator going to say? Especially with Bitcoin stuff, it's like, what's the guidance from the IRD?
Which is ironic, given that like we probably have like the most lenient and like relaxed, like those agencies are some of the most like lenient and relaxed in the world. You screw up your taxes to IRD and you get like penalties or whatever. Very often they just waive it, or they'll like work with you, they'll talk with you, they'll try to help you through it if you're like you've made a sincere mistake. They're not just out to like smash you all the time. And New Zealand just like has, I feel like so much of the time in like other countries, when people like see a gray area of the law, they decide, okay, well, I'm going to go out there and test it, or I'm just going to like assume if it's not illegal, then it's legal. But in New Zealand, we have a lot more of an approach of just like, well, I don't see anyone else who's doing it, so I'm not going to go and do it either.
Man, I know exactly what you mean, because I to be honest, I have a similar experience. Japan's a little bit like New Zealand in that regard, and it's over-regulated big time. And it's like, man, my gut feeling is I always assume when something looks like an opportunity and no one's pounced on it, it's because there's some hidden clause, there's some bylaw that's affecting that. Whereas I've actually learned a lot. I got a lot of Chinese friends, and if you work with Chinese people, they love being on the edge. They love being in the grey zone, and there's edge there. There's like arbitrage, there's opportunity there. Sure, as you say, you can work with people and you can negotiate things. If you end up doing something that's not quite right, ask for forgiveness instead of permission, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's how with we've had, untold innovation and like quality of life improvements.
I think the old school New
yeah.
Zealand is a bit more like that, though, right? Like, back in the day, everyone was just doing it themselves and didn't really care. But it's maybe it's like since the 90s or maybe the 80s, things have changed. I don't know, but.
Yeah, I think it's if you sort of grow up in a more like rural area, you still have like some of the like old values. Yeah, I found it. I was talking to someone not so long ago about how New Zealand like culture has changed over time, and they were like, they were just curious about like how you would like describe New Zealand culture. They thought they what did they say? They were curious about our response to COVID. Well, in whatever case, they saw us as being like quite obedient or trusting or what we say, kind of like conformist or something like that. And I found that really surprising, because I would have said that New Zealand for the longest time, like Australia and New Zealand, like the whole Anzac culture, Anzac spirit of mateship is that like it's anti-authoritarian, right? Like it's everyone is sort of mates, are equals, and someone who's far away in a suit in some tall rise building shouldn't be able to like tell you what to do. I feel like that used to be a very strong value in New Zealand, and then it was just sort of taken away. Like there used to be a really strong like value on like the number 8 wire mentality and building things with your hands and that's sort of gone away as well, or even just like this sort of idea of like the Kiwi bloke as like a guy who's tough and like if he goes out and gets injured at a rugby match or bashes his foot on some rock or whatever, he just sort of stiff upper lip and soldiers on. And even that's like being kind of like demonized and like pushed out of New Zealand culture. So I don't really know what type of culture we have now, but it's like it's very far away from the like Kiwiana idea of 50 years ago, where we're a nation of if you just go and listen to We Don't Know How Lucky We Are from 1998, Fred Dagg, and you just compare that to New Zealand today, it's insane, the difference.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the number, it's in a sense the tall poppy syndrome that you mentioned before. That in the old days, that had a legitimate value as, kind of critical of the Privy Council or the Queen or whatever, and England and the power structures seemed far away, and New Zealand's government was generally quite flat. You could ring up the Prime Minister, at his home,
the class of society.
Have a yarn, these kind of national myths. But that has changed, and I don't know, I mean, again, you and me have both left, and many others have left. But look, moving on to what you're working on, man, because I was quite blown away when I saw the news about your team at the hackathon, and I think you had only just arrived in Brazil, and you jumped into this hackathon, and you guys ended up winning. So tell me about that story.
Yeah, indeed. I had only just arrived. I came here late last year for another Bitcoin conference, and then this one happened to be hosted in February. And it was. I had been following Bitcoin Plus for a while. They're probably the like best educational resource out there for like the technical education resource for Bitcoiners right now. Organizers of conferences where people are talking about emerging multi-sig technology and taproot script paths and what all the like really like nitty-gritty stuff. Once I found out that there was one being hosted in Brazil, I just immediately signed up and booked a flight down. And then when I was there, I met 3 others who I had never met before. And over the weekend we built this this sort of prototype app, and yeah, somehow managed to take away the top prize.
Yeah, so NostrPIX. Tell me about that though, because it interfaces with the Brazilian payment system.
Yep. So PIX is like a sort of proto CBDC. It's got very high like penetration across Brazil. It's an interbank like instant payment system with all transactions routed through the central bank. It's kind of similar to what is it? India has, is it UbiPay?
Universal, universal payment system.
UPN, is it?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
UPS,
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's an instant payment system. People use it to receive money, receive in between individuals. You can buy online at a website. You can buy from card readers. Almost everything that like holds or accepts money in Brazil is integrated with this PIX system. And one of the problems with the PIX system is that you can't use it unless you have like Brazilian documents. You need to have a Brazilian ID number, you need a Brazilian tax number, you need a bank account registered against those details, because that just the basic design of PIX requires a lot of information. They want to have people's names, locations, tax numbers, all of that to like link together their transactions and the metadata associated with them. So if you are visiting Brazil, you have basically no way of using this payment system that is preferred and available everywhere. That's what I was going to compare it to, PromptPay, like the Thai QR system. Yeah, that's a similar system as well. So yeah, we just decided, okay, well let's figure out a way that we can make that happen. Let's find a way that we can pay PIXs on a Bitcoiner's behalf and then like accept Bitcoin, and then immediately upon receiving the Bitcoin, execute the payment. And yeah, we were able to get that going.
Yeah, can you tell me how that works though? Because if it's this like KYC system, how do you get someone who's not in that system to use it?
So for the prototype, we just used our personal details. So the payments coming out from our name. And then I think PIX technically does allow you to use it without a Brazilian tax ID, but just the vast majority of APIs and systems related to it require a Brazilian entity, like an individual company. So yeah, we just started off with our names, our personal KYC information, but part of what we're planning for the future is to let Brazilians sign up. So we'll charge a fee on each transaction. Brazilians, if they add their own tax number, tax details, their own KYC information, will get a discount on that fee. And if they volunteer their tax ID for other people to use to make payments on behalf of them, they can earn that fee. So having a sort of peer-to-peer system where payments are still coming out and being associated with particular senders, but if you don't have the ability to KYC, which you don't if you're a tourist in Brazil, or if you care about the privacy of your transaction, which is a very valid concern considering that your full legal name is revealed on every traditional transaction. That's
So what I like about that though, so for your prototype, you guys just use your details, but are you saying that the PIX platform has an API that you could just loop into, and that's how you were able to do it?
Yeah, there's various services that provide APIs. I used one that was actually specifically set up for helping international businesses accept and received PIXs from their Brazilian users. So I had that registered against my New Zealand limited company. But yeah, there's many banking as a service APIs in Brazil. Brazil's a pretty open banking system.
Can you tell me that PIX stuff, is that only for individual people, or could a company have a PIX ID?
Yes, companies can and do use them. It's free for individuals, but it's also very low cost for companies too.
Because I was just going to say, instead of an individual necessarily offering up their thing to others to use, I mean, maybe this is where there's the business could offer that service to them potentially, right?
Yeah. I think it's better to try to keep individual details involved, just because you kind of walk into financial service provider territory if you're like a business, managing payments on like behalf of other people. If you're instead just like sort of basically like a peer-to-peer platform, and other people are like willingly taking on like the responsibility of making payments for others, I think that probably makes a lot more sense.
That's fascinating though, because that sort of contrasting that with the New Zealand experience, so-called open banking, which at the very best it's someone asking you for a wind cave portal to put your password and username in, and then it's like remembering that to make payments. Bro, it's pretty like low tech.
It's against the bank's own terms and conditions. Yet the banks themselves use these services to do like loan applications. Like, connect to your other bank account and we'll grab your statements for the loan application. So they're okay with breaking the other bank's terms and conditions when they're like applying you for a loan. But we take no responsibility if you insert your card details on Poly or Windcave, which is used by Air New Zealand and Bunnings and yeah.
Yeah, well, what I like about what you've described with NostrPIX is that you still eventually, the settlement is still happening in real, but you're able to make the payment with sats, and that's pretty cool. Like you can live on a Bitcoin standard quite easily, and you're not having to do anything extra. It's not. I mean, ideally, you go completely off that network and just use Lightning. But if the merchant doesn't accept that, what are you going to do? But this allows you to pay them still.
Yeah. And I think too, like, there were some people who, we actually, I think part of the reason that we won the hackathon is that we did really well on social media for some reason. We actually had, the majority of our users were not actually people like foreigners without local banking details, but they were actually Brazilians who were trying out the service. And of course, when you sort of blow up on social media, you end up getting like a couple of really like angry people too, right? So we had like some people reaching out saying like, this is completely pointless because PIX is a KYC system that is a massive invasion of privacy, and you're just holding back Bitcoin adoption by doing this. And my answer to that would be like, actually, if you just make it really easy for people to like use sats day to day, even if it's always transacted in the fiat, you're getting people used to using Bitcoin, and you're just like normalizing the use of Bitcoin as like an everyday means of exchange. So like it's much easier to make the jump from like, I'm paying you with Bitcoin, but you're getting Brazilian reais or dollars or whatever it is, to like, I pay you Bitcoin and you receive it directly.
Yeah. Is that how you say it, by the way? That R is an H sound, isn't it? Real? With the currency?
Sorry. Yeah, in Portuguese. Yeah.
No. I should know that, because in Jiu-Jitsu, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's always like the R sounds become H's. But with what you just said though, so I'm actually impressed. So this wasn't just for the hackathon. You had some like random people using it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, we were like live sharing it on social media. I actually like live coded it. Like I was on like OBS Studio while I was coding out the application. We did, and we had like majority of our team was non-technical as well. So we were just like spamming, getting people to try it out. We got a lot of users. We got so much users that we actually like lost money on the the Bitcoin like price swings that weekend, and we ended up like regularly having to re-top up our account with like another $100-$200 just to keep things ticking over.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. I mean, that demonstrates product market fit though. Like, fuck it. You're not. It's literally a prototype in a weekend, and you got users. Like, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that. And so you're saying there's maybe potentially a more commercial version of this coming out you guys are working on?
Yeah. We're working just sort of, mostly based off, we're scrapping the front end and we're just making like a really good back end for it that we can potentially like offer for like anyone to integrate their app into. I think that's probably a better idea than, just like trying to make yet another, like wallet or service or app. Fully removing custody as well. That's important. The Nostr in our name comes from like Nostr Wallet Connect. This like protocol for like automatically like pulling payments from a Lightning wallet. So we want to do that. And also like automatic fiat conversion too, which I'm planning to use Lightning Pay for in New Zealand. Like as a New Zealand business, you can accept like Bitcoin as a payment from overseas, right? From overseas clients. You don't need to get a bunch of information from them. And then you can turn that into Brazilian reais with something like TransferWise and send to Brazilian bank accounts without having Brazilian like tax documents. I think that's the way to do it is have Lightning Pay like in New Zealand be that back end. It's going to be expensive to go from Bitcoin to New Zealand dollars to reais, but at the end of the day, like if it's useful, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, there's a good flow with again, people living only in New Zealand wouldn't really get this, but there's a really good flow to go from something like Lightning Pay to Wise because you're suddenly then able to use Wise wherever you want, and you're kind of exiting out of the New Zealand system that way. So it's kind of an interesting model. And I think, again, what you said, though, it's just so awesome that, this infrastructure was available for you to just tap into and build this stuff. And I do feel like New Zealand, it's kind of this archaic system of the FPOS and these like proprietary networks that kind of were pretty cutting edge in the 90s, but they've just sort of stayed at that point. And I don't know, it's sort of the way the mobile revolution has happened in other parts of Asia, and that it's like, man, New Zealand's nowhere near getting to that point because we're sort of locked in at FPOS cards in 1990 or whatever,
Yep.
Yeah. So, well done, man. And I mean, huge addressable market as well, just in Brazil. Like, again, hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah. There are certainly many like KYC services allowing you to pay this like PIX in Brazil, but hopefully there's like a market for people who I don't know, care more about their privacy or foreigners incapable of getting Brazilian bank accounts.
Yeah, fascinating. So that's the hackathon, and then you're also working for a payroll company leading some of the Bitcoin integration stuff. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So I recently joined Rise. They're a crypto payroll company, sort of originally like focused on stable coins like USDC and USDT, like allowing companies to manage their payroll where they'll deposit funds on, and then like employees or contractors to take payouts in cryptocurrency as well, and they support fiat too. So they've been around for several years. I want to say 2021, but have recently begun taking off. I'm actually not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure the company like raised funding like last November, and that's what led me having a chat with the team and coming on to work in their ramps team, which has to do with everything related to moving money on or off the platform. And so I'm integrating Bitcoin as a deposit and payout method. Mainnet, Lightning, hopefully Taproot assets. And it's I'm really enjoying it. It's really cool. I mean, like, I love making stuff that lets people use Bitcoin in the real world, and like getting paid directly in Bitcoin, no intermediaries, is one of the best ways that you can acquire it.
Oh man, that's brilliant. Well done, man. That's awesome. And also looking at that real world side of things, I think this is something that I've been thinking more about. I don't know what it is. It feels like we've entered into a bit more of a bit of a bull run. Things have popped off. There's maybe a focus on holding Bitcoin, but if I go back to when we first met at BitKiwi, and we were buying our drinks and spending sats and using Lightning, it's like there's something very enjoyable about the payment side, which is what it was all about originally, right? So I don't know. Tell me more about that. Like,
As
what's
far
your
as I'm
outlook?
concerned, if you don't aren't forced to spend or sell your sats, you haven't bought enough. That means that you have fiat in reserve that you haven't converted to Bitcoin. Like
Yeah.
you're underexposed. If you truly believe in Bitcoin enough to be like, oh, of course I'm going to spend dollars first before I spend Bitcoin. Yeah. Well, clearly you don't think that way, because you still have quite a few dollars, enough that you never have to sell or spend.
Yeah.
It should feel a little bit painful, but you should be doing it all the time, because it's the only place that you're keeping your money.
Yeah. No, I mean it's like riding the wave, right? You got to have it in Bitcoin, otherwise, you're just staying flat with a deflating local
I've
currency.
regretted a lot of times, like not having bought Bitcoin, or not having kept Bitcoin. I have not regretted many times where like I bought and then it's like gone down and I'm like forced to sell a bit. Like that's just sort of life, but like the missed opportunities are like always like hurt more.
Well, I also think, I mean, tax aside, because there is some regulatory stuff there, but in terms of the conceptual approach to it, I always think about it as like first in, last out, and so maybe it dips today and you have to spend some Bitcoin, but if you think about that, just having taken that from some of the Bitcoin that you brought years ago, that you're sort of you're not actually losing, if you know what I mean. It's sort of, you're just taking it from the earlier period.
To a degree. And also speaking of tech specifically, like I feel like the more that we actually use Bitcoin like day to day, the like more of a precedent we're setting to like challenge the idea that Bitcoin is only a speculative asset with zero utility, that is like purely bought with fiat to sell for more fiat later, which is how most tax departments around the world treat it. So if you can start like using it day to day, you that at least is beginning to like prove something different than the law considers it to be.
That's a really fascinating point, because if we have years and years of large numbers of people using Bitcoin for their day-to-day expenses, when there is maybe a legal challenge to it from the state, and you get a good legal team together and just say, hey guys, like, man, this precedent's been set, why didn't you say anything earlier?
Actually, the interesting thing about New Zealand is that the actual wording of the IRD's guidance on crypto assets, if I understand it correctly, is that you have to pay tax on cryptocurrency that you acquire for the purpose of disposal. So like that you buy with fiat to like sell for a higher price later. And they have these sort of assumptions in there that like, okay, by default, like if you sell in the future, even if you bought it for a different reason, like you're considered to have bought it for disposal because you sold it just then. Or, things as well, like even if you receive a payment in Bitcoin, you're considered to have received the fiat value and then like immediately bought Bitcoin. Like I reckon, but the like ambiguity like exists there to be like challenged and teased out in the future, where what happens if you're just buying Bitcoin because you want to use it day to day and you don't care about the price? It can that be treated like stock that you acquire in a company when you're starting the company? You're not trying to like make a profit or day trade or whatever. You're just getting equity in a company as you're helping build it. Because right now, like we don't, if someone buys a house and sells it for a higher price later, we don't consider that to be like capital gains tax or whatever, right? Like no, it's just your home. So yeah, I think a similar thing could happen to Bitcoin in the future.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting. I mean, you mentioned the housing thing, which there are emerging arguments, and you got the whole bright line test and all that bullshit. But like, basically, that's a racket, man. Like, yeah, you sell a house 5 years, is it? And you don't have to pay any capital gains tax.
Yeah.
Yet you sell some sats.
I don't see that. Changing anytime soon. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, I feel like we just need a bunch of people like testing out that question that, like, you know, is everyone who's getting, like, are you declaring every time you're receiving, like, you know, you're getting paid back by your mates Bitcoin after, like, buying them food at a bar? Are you declaring that as like a Bitcoin purchase? I would say like the vast majority of people aren't, and they shouldn't be either. Like, you know, you don't declare cash that you're like given either. You don't declare money that you're getting in the garage sale, right? And it would be totally unreasonable to expect people to, you know, track all those like minute things, and then you end up spending that money like somewhere else later. Like the system has no problem with that right now, and I think like so many of us are just like just wanting to like hear the like approval from the government first that like, yes, it's okay to use Bitcoin as like a medium of exchange. The intent of like the cryptocurrency tax laws is just that they want to like get a slice of the pie for the people who are doing like massive trading movements and making tons of money, gambling on altcoins, right? If you've just got like a little lightning $5 payment, and then you purchase a coffee, so you get like paid 5,000 sats, and that's worth a $5 coffee, and then the price rises and you're only paying 4,500 sats. You know, are you going to be calculating the profit on that? Like, no.
Yeah. Well, again, it comes back to that culture thing, because, you know, if you really zoom out, what is the net benefit to the New Zealand, you know, project to have some really good infrastructure and innovation around Bitcoin payments? I would argue that the benefit to the New Zealand government would actually be to have more of these companies doing stuff like this and not try and nickel and dime small payments. It's like, man, what? And I think we actually do it to ourselves, because, as you say, you know, it just hasn't really been super clarified, and I don't know if it ever will be. Like, they're not ever going to be like, this. No,
I don't think it's going to be clarified until
until it's too late.
Someone's hand is forced. But I think when the challenge happens, it's going to be pretty, like the people who are getting, however it's like, tested out in law, I'm quite sure they're going to be treated properly. You know, there's not going to be these sort of like kangaroo courts, what's his name, like Julian Assange in, United States or whatever. Like, in general, like the New Zealand authorities, FMA, IRD, whatever, can be generally trusted to be, fairly like reasonable, right? Yeah. So I reckon, like, if they're trying to like bring up like some dairy shop owner out because he failed to declare the Bitcoin payments for the last 2 years, and he was just like unaware that like he was having to declare it as anything other than New Zealand dollars, then I feel like that they'll get treated more fairly in New Zealand than most countries.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating, man. Like, I think, it's sort of encouraging that, again, it's a little bit like the more you use it, the more it's just established as practice. It's just normal. And the New Zealand regulators are way behind anyway. Like, they're under-resourced. And look, these guys are busy people dealing with all sorts of things. So I think a bit of compassion there, that it's... you don't need to be scared. And I think there are these horror stories that people maybe imagine, but you're not doing anything wrong. You're just using a digital currency to make a payment, and it's innovative.
It shouldn't be treated any differently than you treat a credit card, a debit card, an EFTPOS, a cash transaction. All of those perfectly legal. They don't require, every time you sell coffee for Bitcoin, you don't have to get all these KYC details. that is considered normal. It would be considered weird if you're being asked for your passport every time that you want to buy coffee. So yeah, like
Yeah, well, even just the exchange rate slippage and stuff like that. You know, if you're an overseas visitor and you're spending US dollars in New Zealand with your US credit card, like, you know, are you keeping track of that stuff? Anyway, I mean, it's interesting. I do see an opportunity, and our friends at Lightning Pay are really working on some awesome stuff here to be able to pay bills. You know, work in this new ecosystem, and hopefully, I think, maybe with the open banking that's starting to happen in New Zealand, you know, being able to loop in to some of that stuff, like what you've done with NostrPIX, could be really interesting as well. I don't know if we'll see that anytime soon, but, you know, being able to actually take the fiat aspects out of it as much as we can, so that, you can just hold Bitcoin and pay your bills with Bitcoin in New Zealand.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to, with that like Akahu service that Lightning Pay is based off as well. Okay. Like that opens up the ability for day-to-day individuals to like automate their bank transfers and interact with their bank data automatically. I think that opens up the opportunity to create a like proper automated like peer-to-peer market in New Zealand for Bitcoin.
Well, Akahu is an interesting piece, but the other one I was thinking about, because Akahu would allow those classic bank transfers, right? And I've used that method where I pay sats through Lightning Pay, and I can pay a bill, you know, settle the bill in New Zealand dollars for something. But I think the real challenge is when it comes to point of sale, you know, and I wonder whether there's some sort of loop back where now that you can get, I think you can get people's details. And so I wonder whether, you know, there could be the thing where, like, you go to tap to pay, the merchant's details are sort of sent to you, and then that gets settled somehow, you know, on the Lightning Pay side or on the fiat side, kind of instantly. And so you're sort of reducing the amount of fiat that you actually have to hold, because at the moment, if you still want to tap and pay with debit card, it's still fiat to fiat. Whereas if you could hold it, that it's like the reservoir is Bitcoin, and at the moment you go to pay, it takes it straight from your Bitcoin stash into fiat to settle that transaction. Something like that could be really interesting, right?
Yeah, or better, like a credit card that's like collateralized against your Bitcoin, so you spend in fiat, and then you can settle at the end of the month.
Anyway, we're going down the rabbit hole, but James, I'm keen to just find out for the rest of this year, what's on your horizon?
Yeah, well, I'm my main focus is my job at Rise, where I'm getting Bitcoin to their Bitcoin integration to like a really high standard, teaching people about it, because like most of the people there are sort of from the more Ethereum sort of side of things. So explaining the differences between Bitcoin and Ethereum to them, and just making sure it's like a first class supported asset on their platform. Would love to integrate Taproot assets especially after USDT launches on Taproot assets. And I mean, I'm just sort of focused on getting established back on like this side of the world, potentially looking at acquiring Brazilian citizenship or Paraguayan residency, and just like working as much as I can in my spare time on building like open source like Bitcoin stuff, anything that makes it easier to like use Bitcoin or like solves real world problems that I've encountered. I'm keen to build.
That's bloody awesome, man. And Brazilian citizenship, you see a pathway for that? Like, is it pretty straightforward?
Yeah. I should be able to know if I can apply in May. That's when I'm going to get back the results from a Portuguese fluency test that I did. And if I can prove like that I've resided here in the past, and that I've paid taxes, and that I don't have a criminal record, and that I speak like good Portuguese, I can apply for citizenship. It's probably going to take forever, but then I could have the New Zealand and the Brazilian passport, full access to Mercosur, plus all the access that New Zealand gives you.
It's bloody brilliant, man. I can see. I mean, that's pretty attractive. You know, if Brazil wants entrepreneurs and smart people to come, like being able to get it.
Well, like that. And I mean, Paraguay is also looking like a super compelling option. Brazil has like some benefits for entrepreneurs. Like if you can like figure out like a way of like making things work, you can actually pay lower tax than you have in New Zealand. There are like incentives, especially for exporters here. So you will like pay. You can pay like. I have a friend who's like paying like 5% tax instead of 28%, right? New Zealand, but in Paraguay they do 0% tax on your global income. And also no like import duties. So you have like access to America level prices for laptops or phones or webcams or microphones, whatever equipment you want. You also have very cheap power and a very business friendly environment and 0% tax on income that's not sourced from within Paraguay. So a lot of Bitcoiners moving there. I'm very keen to check it out.
Yeah, that's fascinating, man. Well, look, good luck with all of that stuff, and thanks for sharing your story. Really impressive. Kiwi boy from Christchurch making it happen on the other side of the world, in what is possibly one of the most exciting regions of the world for Bitcoin, which is Latin America, and really seems like there could be a lot of opportunity there in the future. So I wish you all the best of luck with that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. All right, man. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.